can try and win championships, and that's what it's all about. When you look from the outside and you watch this team, I know we're going to have a real good, solid hockey team this year.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Eric Wilson, joined by my co-host, Anthony Rivardo. And, after last night's game, Tarasenko made his New York Rangers debut, and we're here to discuss how well he played, kind of evaluate his first game as a New York Ranger, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But before we do, Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Awesome job. You rocked your first intro. Great job, Eric. And who else did a great job? Vladimir Tarasenko. He crushed it in his debut with the New York Rangers last night. 1 shot, 1 goal. Awesome stuff. He had 13 minutes and 58 seconds of ice time. He was playing on that first line alongside Panarin and, of course, Zibanejad. So really love to see how he performed in his first game with the Rangers and excited to see what is to come in the future. And as well as Niko Mikkola, I think that's how we say it, right? The defenseman that the Rangers also traded for in the Tarasenko trade. He got some ice time as well. He didn't look the best, but he didn't look the worst. Looked like a solid player out there. So, again, huge blowout victory, 6-3 win over the Kraken. Really, really awesome stuff from the Rangers last night. Eric, how are you feeling after that awesome Tarasenko trade and debut?
Dude, I'm feeling phenomenal. Obviously, it was pretty important that we added top 6 depth onto the Rangers, as well as another defenseman to somewhat replace Ben Harper. Ben Harper is now our just 7th defenseman that we will rotate in every once in a while. But both of our new players looked pretty decent. Tarasenko obviously scored his first goal as a Ranger, first number 91 to score a goal as a Ranger in Rangers history, fun fact. And Mikkola, even though it wasn't like a star out there, he didn't look bad at all. As you mentioned, he looked pretty solid out there. It looked like he played very well with Schneider, and it's pretty incredible. I'm pretty excited, and I think we're kind of cooking up like a Stanley Cup winning roster right now. I guess we'll see against Carolina tonight at 7, who is number 2 in the league, obviously leading the Metropolitan Division. So I kind of feel like we're on a 4-game win streak. They're a really good team. This is a really true test of what this team can bring to the table.
Yeah, big time game tonight against Carolina. That will say a lot about the Rangers and where they are in terms of their push into the postseason and hopefully deeper than just the first round. I think that a lot of fans were looking at the Rangers as a team that might sneak into the postseason. We'll see how they do. But after this Vladimir Tarasenko trade, I think that we can be talking about the Rangers as potential cup contenders, as you just mentioned. I mean, now that you look at this team with Tarasenko in the lines, you're talking depth. Top to bottom, you're seeing a lot of great players all over the place. Maybe there's a weak link here or there, and Vitaly Kravtsov might be one of them. We're going to discuss that in just a second here. But really, Eric, what are your thoughts on the depth that the Rangers have? Of course, going with the kid line on the third line again. We know how great that line's been, but now that you have a line of Panarin, Zibanejad, Tarasenko, and then Kreider, Trocheck, and maybe Kravtsov is the weak link, but everybody really playing great last night. VC Goudreau, Gauthier even played well. This just looks like a team chock full of depth. And how important is that heading into the postseason?
I mean, it's extremely important. One of the biggest flaws that we saw throughout last year's playoff run was a lack of depth. There were certain points in times where the first 2 lines were scoring goals and the bottom 6 was doing nothing. And then when the kid line eventually stepped up later into the run, it was the first and second line that were really doing nothing. But you look at a game like last night, I would almost call it a perfect game. The first 3 goals each came from a different line. It started out with Tarasenko, his first New York Rangers goal, and then Kakko scored a goal, and then Trocheck. So it was first line, second line, third line, all contributing. And that's really what you need when you want to make a deep playoff run. You look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, who won back-to-back cups just 2 years ago. They had incredible depth. Everyone on every line was contributing. And that's what we see with the Rangers right now. And that is exactly what we need. So I'm feeling pretty good about this right now.
Yeah, when we're taking a look at Tarasenko and his performance last night, since we really want to focus in on him, the latest addition to the New York Rangers, Eric, what was the difference maker? Why did Tarasenko propel this team to have a 6-goal win over the Kraken? Because we've seen the Rangers play well at times, but this looked like the best of the Rangers so far this season. And it's no coincidence that the Rangers play their best hockey as soon as Tarasenko gets entered into this lineup. So what do you think that difference is? Having a player like Tarasenko of that quality in the top 6, what is it about his game that's allowed other guys to succeed, and why could that be the difference-making move that the Rangers made?
I mean, I think it's just a really good morale boost, as simple and as boring as that may sound, the Rangers, who have already been on a little bit of a heater, picking up wins left and right, go out and acquire a guy who's a well-known like goal scorer in the league, has won a Stanley Cup in the past, is very good friends with Artemi Panarin, who is another one of our superstars. And it kind of just like it gets everyone excited, the amount of energy that I saw coming from the Rangers last night as I was watching that game, I have not seen the entire season. It was like every single player was skating as fast as they could, hitting as hard as they could, and just doing everything they could to score goals. And it honestly looked like a new team despite only one player being changed. So you just bring in a guy who's like known to score goals and is like pretty much one of the better goal scorers in the league, and it just changes everyone's morale. And as simple as that sounds, it's extremely important, especially during this time frame of the season, where the trade deadline is coming up. Luckily, Chris Drury, I know I mentioned this in a previous episode where I was like a little questionable about the timing with it, but you really think about it, you make the trade as early as you can. It gives Tarasenko more time to get suited to this new environment, new play style, new team, new coach, and it's already working out. And as soon as he just like keeps on aligning with the Rangers, it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, I think the sky is the limit with these new lines, with Tarasenko being added to the lineup. And, you mentioned it, you kind of described it. It's really just as simple as getting someone who's that talented and that good at scoring goals that could be all the difference. Now, we saw the Rangers last year make a couple trades at the deadline that paid off, and it got them pretty deep in the postseason, but they capped out at the Eastern Conference Finals. They made it all the way, 2 games away pretty much from making it to the finals. Eric, how is this different in your opinion? Tarasenko versus the guys that the Rangers traded for last season. And how can this be the difference between making it to the Eastern Conference Finals and then taking it to the Stanley Cup Finals? Now, in my opinion, I think it's because you still have all of the same core members from last year's team, right? Like Panarin's still there. Of course, Igor's still there. And the kid line, this is the difference to me. The kid line has another year of experience underneath their belts, and they have more experience going into the postseason. And of course, they have the experience from last year's postseason to be a little bit more prepared, not have those kind of absent moments like Kako at the end of the Eastern Conference Finals became a little bit absent, was a healthy scratch because of that. I think that will get the experience that they had gets rid of those absent moments and allows them to play at a high level in the postseason. Plus Tarasenko being an elite goal scoring machine. Are you thinking the same way as we, look ahead to the postseason? And, why is this trade more important than the trades that were made last year?
Yeah, like I fully agree with everything you just said. Experience is the biggest thing right now, because you look at our big trade deadline acquisitions last season with Andrew Copp and Frank Vetrano. They were good. Cobb was really good as a playmaker. Vetrano was really good at scoring goals. But at the end of the day, when the playoffs came around, they didn't exactly contribute as much as we would have wanted them to in the playoffs. Like really the kid line carried last season's playoffs. But you look at a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko and his story with the Blues. When they won the Cup in 2019, at January 1st, about halfway through the season, the Blues were literally dead last in the entire league. And they eventually went on this insane push, made the playoffs, and then won the Cup. And Tarasenko was a huge part of that. So we keep saying, like, he has experience. He knows what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. Like, he knows the most out of anyone in the entire league, how hard you have to play, how much you have to grind in order to make that playoff push and really push yourself to win the Cup. So you bring a guy like that who is a well-known, like, locker room professional. He always raises people's morales. And that's what he's going to do. You take a guy like Vitaly Kravtsov, who we have questionable doubts about, and then you add in Tarasenko, a fellow Russian. That's another thing to like touch upon. The Rangers have a lot of Russians now. You got Panarin, you got Igor, you got Kravtsov, you got Tarasenko. As like minor as it sounds, that's something you can bond with. And you look at Mikkola, the other part of the trade, another Finnish player who can finally give Kako like a fellow Finnish player to play with. It's outside of the ice. It will bring the team together, and it will bring pretty much raise their play because they're playing with people that they're familiar with and they have played with before in like other tournaments like the World Juniors and stuff. So yeah, Tarasenko brings a lot of experience. So does Mikkola, and it's all coming together. That's all I'm saying.
No, I think that's an excellent point to bring up, with the chemistry between the guys from the same nations. That's huge. And I think that was on full display last night. As you mentioned earlier, the energy that the Rangers had last night, they looked just bouncing off the walls with energy. They went out there and they played their best hockey. And I think that this trade was really that spark, that spark plug that they needed. Of course, you think back to earlier in the season when the Rangers went through that real bad drought where they couldn't win games and people started questioning Gerard Gallant. Well, now Chris Drury making this big time trade and bringing in a guy who some of these players are already familiar with from being with the same nation and all that kind of stuff. That really brings this team together, as you said, and lets them have that spark, lets them have that chemistry, going into the second half of the year, where I think that the experience that Tarasenko can provide to this team, being a Stanley Cup winner, is invaluable as to what that would mean, especially when you're talking about the kid lines and the experience that they gained last year being super valuable. But now you're throwing in a guy like Tarasenko who's won it all. That's even more experience. This team is in much better shape and far more prepared for the postseason this year than they were at this time last year. And we know that this time last year weren't all that prepared, but they still made it pretty far anyway. So, Eric, I also want to ask you what your thoughts are on Nico Mikkola, what you saw from him, why you think he could be a difference maker entering, the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, based off of last night, I won't lie, I'll be honest, I was only able to watch the first 2 periods, so don't judge my opinion based on anything in the third period. The Last of Us came out. I had to watch that. But he looks really good in the first 2 periods. Obviously he's more of a defensive defenseman playing alongside Schneider, who's a little bit more offensive. But he made a couple of really good plays. He had a couple of good takeaways, made a couple of blocks. And even though he is a defensive defenseman, I did witness him carry the puck up the ice a couple times. I know there was at one point he was like literally right in front of the net waiting for a cross crease, and unfortunately the pass didn't get through, but like he almost scored a goal. So it kind of seems like he seamlessly just fit in like right away. There was no transition time whatsoever. He just joined the Rangers and immediately just hit the ice and started making progress on his game. And the same thing goes for Tarasenko too. Both players just immediately fit in. It kind of seems like they might have should have been here like a long time ago. But I don't know. I'm happy to have them both here. I'm not disappointed with either of the plays so far. Obviously, it was only one game, so don't want to judge everything based off of that. I guess we'll see how they both perform tonight against Carolina. This is like the true test right here.
Yeah, I agree. This is the true test going up against top tier talent tonight. But I got to say, you kind of just said it there, but I love how seamlessly these guys fit into the lines and how quickly they picked it up and were immediately making an impact. No buffer period, no hitch to start off their debuts. They debuted and they debuted well. And I think that's really exciting. But before we wrap this up, Eric, there's just one last thing that I want to touch on. We were talking about it before we started recording, and that's Vitaly Kravtsov. How are we feeling about this player? Because we've been discussing it in yesterday's or 2 days ago, the episode that we recorded talking about the Vladimir Tarasenko trade. I also found some reports saying that the Rangers weren't necessarily done and they might be trying to find another player to trade for. Someone not as big name as Tarasenko, of course, but someone low key to bring in maybe on the fourth line, add some depth down there. And so when we look at that, the potential of the Rangers adding in even more talent, who goes? Well, it's probably got to be Kravtsov at this point, and he's kind of been a little bit inconsistent this season, especially at the start of the year. We know he was dealing with an injury every other game, right? And now at this point, Eric, what is your outlook for Kravtsov? If he stays with the team, do you think he can make that impact in the postseason? Because really, the Rangers are clearly getting their roster in shape for the postseason right now. They're getting prepared for that. So do you think that Kravtsov is a guy that they want to carry in, or is this a guy they don't want to carry into the postseason? They're going to be looking for a way to change that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because Kravtsov shows so much potential. He's like right where Kakko was last season, where it's like we know that he can score goals and make a big difference on the ice, but he's not just there yet. And we gave Kakko the time he needed in order to just break out and have like a stellar season, as we're witnessing right before our eyes right now. But at this point, the Rangers have a Stanley Cup winning roster, and Kravtsov kind of seems like he's the only one on that right wing that doesn't really fit in. We have Tarasenko, we have who is it? Kakko on the right wing. And the fourth line is just like a fourth line grinder. And it's really just Kravtsov that doesn't fit in right there. And although he shows potential, if the Rangers really want to be perfectionists and develop a roster that we can like pretty much guarantee will make a decent run throughout the playoffs, he might just be the one to go. And, obviously we made our big splash. We acquired Tarasenko. That's probably going to be our biggest blockbuster trade of the year. But in my opinion, it wouldn't hurt to maybe acquire another player for a guy like Vitaly Kravtsov. And it doesn't need to be anyone big, like someone like Frank Vetrano last season, where all we really had to give up was like a second or third rounder. I don't remember what, don't quote me, but I know it was just like a draft pick. It was like nothing big. And he just immediately joined and started scoring goals for us. He wasn't the best, but he was better than what we had. So just like a 1-for-1 trade, like Kravtsov for another player, maybe throwing a pick to sweeten the deal. I don't know, but Kravtsov kind of seems like the odd man out on that right wing slot right there. You got our superstars, you got the role players who don't score points but do what they need to do to get the job done. And then there's just Kravtsov, who's just kind of skating around, waiting on his turn to break out. And I'm tired of waiting. I want to win right now. It's been too long. 94 was too long ago.
I think that the Rangers are also in a win now mindset when you take a look at, the way that they're building this team, this trade for Tarasenko. It looks like they're swinging for the fences. I think that trade alone for Tarasenko screams like we're going for the cup this season. And I think that the way that they've constructed this roster, made their changes throughout the season, they're in a good spot. They're in good position to make that deep postseason run, especially after this trade for Tarasenko. But like you said, the first game against the Kraken, that was great. Awesome win. Perfect debut for those guys. But tonight's test against Carolina is the true test to see how these guys perform and what this team is really going to look like for this final stretch of the season heading into the postseason. So we'll make sure to recap you all about that game right here on Fireside Rangers. Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and stay tuned. We got plenty more great New York Rangers content coming your way. Leave a like if you enjoyed this episode and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. We'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers! Woo!
He shoots. He's